The year was 2024. The calendar flipped to October, a time when Floridians usually breathe a sigh of relief as hurricane season begins to wane. The air starts to cool, and the threat of major storms typically diminishes. But this year, the atmosphere was charged with an unusual tension. But this year, Mother Nature had other plans. On the morning of October 10th, Hurricane Milton, a powerful Category 4 storm, slammed into the southwestern coast of Florida. The storm had been brewing for days, gaining strength and size, and by the time it made landfall, it was a behemoth of nature's fury. The storm surge, a wall of water pushed ashore by the hurricane's force, inundated coastal communities. Winds howled, reaching speeds of over 140 miles per hour, ripping apart homes and businesses. The sheer force of the wind was enough to uproot trees and send debris flying through the air like missiles. The sky, once a vibrant blue, turned a menacing gray as torrential rain began to fall. Hurricane Milton's arrival was swift and brutal. The rain came down in sheets, reducing visibility to almost nothing and turning roads into rivers within minutes. The storm had intensified rapidly in the Gulf of Mexico, catching many off guard. Despite the hurried preparations, the sheer power of the hurricane took many by surprise. Emergency services had issued warnings, but the speed at which Milton grew left little time for adequate preparation. The storm surge, predicted to be significant, exceeded even the worst-case scenarios, swallowing entire neighborhoods. Streets turned into canals, and homes were submerged up to their rooftops. The water was relentless, sweeping away anything in its path. The sounds of the storm were deafening, the roar of the wind, the crashing of waves, the splintering of wood as structures gave way. It was a cacophony of destruction, a symphony of chaos that played on for hours. In the face of this fury, a sense of fear and uncertainty gripped the hearts of those in Milton's path. Families huddled together in makeshift shelters, praying for the storm to pass. The fear was palpable, a shared experience of dread and helplessness. As the storm raged on, communication lines began to fall, cutting off many from the outside world. The loss of communication added to the sense of isolation and fear as people were unable to reach out for help or check on loved ones. The power grid, unable to withstand the onslaught of the wind, buckled and failed, plunging millions into darkness. The night was lit only by the occasional flash of lightning, revealing glimpses of the devastation outside. The once familiar landscape was now unrecognizable, transformed into a scene of chaos and destruction. Buildings that had stood for decades were reduced to rubble, and the streets were littered with the remnants of people's lives. The storm surge receded, leaving behind a trail of debris, shattered homes, uprooted trees, and overturned cars. The aftermath was a stark reminder of the storm's power and the fragility of human structures in the face of nature's wrath. The air was thick with the smell of salt water, damp earth, and the lingering scent of destruction. It was a smell that would linger for days, a constant reminder of the storm's passage. In the aftermath of Hurricane Milton's initial impact, the true extent of the devastation was still unknown, but one thing was clear. Florida faced a long and arduous road to recovery. Volunteers and rescue teams began to mobilize, but the scale of the disaster was overwhelming. The community would need to come together, showing resilience and solidarity to rebuild and heal from the scars left by Hurricane Milton. Hurricane Milton carved a path of destruction across the Florida peninsula, leaving a lasting impact on the landscape and the lives of those who call it home. After making landfall near Sarasota, the storm churned its way northeast, its powerful winds and torrential rains impacting communities for miles. The relentless force of nature showed no mercy as it moved inland. Wind speeds, a terrifying testament to the storm's strength, were recorded at over 140 miles per hour near the point of landfall. These winds were not just numbers on a gauge, they were a force that reshaped the environment. These winds, strong enough to rip roofs off buildings and toss cars like toys, left a trail of structural damage in their wake. Entire neighborhoods were transformed in a matter of minutes. Rainfall totals were equally staggering. Some areas received over 20 inches of rain in just a few hours, an amount that would normally fall over several months. This deluge overwhelmed drainage systems, turning streets into rivers and flooding homes and businesses. The sheer volume of water was more than the infrastructure could handle. The storm surge, perhaps the most destructive aspect of Hurricane Milton, reached heights of 15 feet in some areas. This surge was a wall of water that swept everything in its path. This wall of water, driven by the hurricane's powerful winds, surged inland, inundating coastal communities and causing catastrophic damage. The force of the surge was enough to reshape the coastline. The storm's impact was felt far beyond its center. Tornadoes, spawned by the hurricane's unstable atmosphere, touched down in several locations, adding to the destruction. These tornadoes brought additional chaos to already devastated areas. These tornadoes, though smaller in scale than the hurricane itself, packed a powerful punch, ripping apart buildings and downing trees. The combined effect of the hurricane and tornadoes was overwhelming. As Milton moved inland, it weakened, but not before dumping torrential rains on central and northern Florida. The storm's reach extended far beyond the coast, affecting a vast area. Rivers and streams, already swollen from the hurricane's rainfall, overflowed their banks, flooding homes and businesses. The flooding was widespread, affecting both urban and rural areas alike, leaving a lasting mark on the region. Sarasota and Bradenton, two vibrant coastal cities in southwestern Florida, found themselves directly in the crosshairs of Hurricane Milton's fury. The storm surge, amplified by the shape of the coastline, hit these areas particularly hard. Water levels rose rapidly, inundating homes, businesses, and critical infrastructure. The iconic Sarasota bayfront, usually bustling with activity, was transformed into a churning sea. Its normally tranquil waters now a maelstrom of debris and destruction. Bradenton, situated just south of Tampa Bay, also faced the full wrath of the storm. The Manatee River, which flows through the city, overflowed its banks, flooding homes and businesses along its shores. The historic downtown area, known for its charming shops and restaurants, was submerged under several feet of water. The storm surge and torrential rains combined to create a devastating 1-2 punch, leaving behind a trail of destruction that stretched for miles. In the aftermath of the storm, the scenes in Sarasota and Bradenton were heartbreaking. Homes were reduced to rubble, their contents scattered amidst the debris. Businesses, many of which were family-owned and operated, were destroyed, their livelihoods washed away by the floodwaters. The once familiar streets were now impassable, littered with debris and downed power lines. The air was thick with the smell of salt water, sewage, and the stench of decay. As the full extent of Hurricane Milton's devastation became clear, a massive rescue and relief effort swung into action. The storm had left a trail of destruction, with homes submerged, roads impassable, and entire communities cut off from the outside world. First responders, many of whom had ridden out the storm themselves, sprang into action, braving treacherous conditions to reach those in need. These brave men and women faced relentless rain, powerful winds, and rising floodwaters as they worked tirelessly to save lives. Firefighters, paramedics, and police officers worked tirelessly, rescuing people trapped in flooded homes, providing medical attention to the injured, and clearing debris from roads to allow for access to affected areas. Their efforts were crucial in the first hours and days following the storm, as they provided immediate relief and support to those affected. The National Guard was mobilized, deploying troops and equipment to assist with the relief efforts. Their presence brought additional resources and manpower, which were desperately needed in the wake of such widespread devastation. Humvees and high-water vehicles navigated flooded streets, rescuing stranded residents and transporting them to safety. These specialized vehicles were essential in reaching areas that were otherwise inaccessible due to the severe flooding. Helicopters buzzed overhead, airlifting critically injured patients to hospitals and delivering much-needed supplies to areas cut off by the storm. The aerial support provided by these helicopters was vital in ensuring that help reached even the most isolated communities. The coordination and cooperation between local, state, and federal agencies were crucial in the immediate aftermath of the storm. This unified response allowed for a more efficient and effective relief effort, as resources and information were shared seamlessly. The response effort was not without its challenges. The sheer scale of the disaster presented numerous obstacles that had to be overcome. Downed trees and power lines blocked roads, making it difficult for rescue crews to reach those in need. Clearing these obstructions was a top priority to ensure that help could be delivered where it was most needed. Flooding and debris hampered search and rescue operations, making it a slow and arduous process. The teams had to navigate through dangerous conditions, often putting their own safety at risk. Communication was also a major challenge, as power outages and damaged cell towers disrupted communication networks. This made it difficult to coordinate efforts and relay critical information. Despite these obstacles, the first responders and National Guard troops worked tirelessly, putting their own lives at risk to save others. Their determination and bravery were evident in every rescue mission they undertook. Their courage and dedication in the face of adversity were a testament to the human spirit's resilience. The unwavering commitment of these heroes ensured that countless lives were saved and that hope was restored in the midst of chaos.